I was 46, not old enough to retire, not young enough to pretend I had time to waste. The kind of age where the past starts weighing more than the future, where the things you've built, your home, your habits, your regrets, start looking back at you. I'd been an electrician for over 2 decades, woke at 5 a.m., coffee with no sugar, lunch in a cooler I never bothered replacing, calloused hands that had long forgotten what softness felt like. I worked jobs that tore at the knees of my jeans and left permanent grime beneath my nails. Blue collar, blue sky, Arizona heat kind of life. No illusions, no applause. And then there was Carol. We met at a mutual friend's cookout. She was laughing too loudly at a story I wasn't paying attention to. She had this way of talking like the words were trying to outrun her breath. I remember watching her from across the yard and thinking, she's too much sun for me, too much movement. But I kept showing up. It wasn't love at first sight. Not for her. For me, maybe. For her, it was more like permission. She gave me permission to enter the wreckage she'd been living in. Permission to steady what had long been shaking. Her son, Ethan, was 15 when I moved in. Still gangly, with knobby elbows and a voice that cracked when he got mad. He didn't speak much at first. When he did, it was clipped like the words hurt coming out. I wasn't foolish enough to try and be his father. He had one of those already, somewhere. A man named Travis. A man who existed in stories told through clenched teeth and calendar gaps. He calls sometimes, Carol had said. Birthdays, maybe Christmas. That was all I needed to know. I didn't try to replace him. I just filled the space he never bothered to claim. When I married Carol, it wasn't a celebration. It was a choice made in the quiet. No wedding party, no long guest list. Just a rented community room, some sheet cake, and a small box of toasts no one really meant. Ethan stood off to the side the whole time, hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. I remember thinking, he'll come around. Kids need time. You can't rush trust. That was my first mistake. What followed were 7 years of sacrifice, poured into a boy who saw me as furniture. I became background noise, a wallet that walked, a name that didn't belong on the emergency contact list, but was always written in anyway. Ethan didn't scream. He didn't rebel. He didn't throw tantrums. His resistance was quieter than that, more surgical. He never yelled, "You're not my dad." But he never called me anything else either. Just Mike. Just the man who fixed things and paid for things and stood at the edge of the living room like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. When his phone broke, it was me who replaced it. When the school threatened to cut sports funding, it was me who wrote the check. When his biological father sent a used pair of sneakers 2 sizes too small for his birthday, it was me who drove him to the store and bought a new pair without saying a word. I did it all because I thought time was currency, that every month, every year would buy me a little more space in his life, a little more acknowledgement. Carol saw it too. She'd tell me sometimes, "You're doing too much," but it was always followed by, "Can you cover the insurance this month?" Or, "The truck needs tires." Her words said stop. Her eyes said don't. So I kept going. We never talked about fairness, about balance, about how much of myself I was giving away. That conversation was always swallowed by the next need, the next quiet emergency. Carol had a way of making everything seem just shy of disaster, and God help me, I thought keeping things afloat was enough to be seen. We lived in a 3-bedroom, single-story ranch just outside Tempe. A house I put my hands into, literally. Rewired the kitchen. Repaired the back deck after termites ate through it. Insulated the garage myself because Ethan wanted a space to work on weights. Every improvement I made, I told myself, this is for them. This is how you show love when you weren't there from the beginning. You earn your place. I never asked Ethan for thanks. I never expected it, not really. But I thought, naively, that absence of hatred meant acceptance. That his silence was a truce. That one day he'd look at the life I built around him and say, even quietly, "I see you." But kids like Ethan don't say much. And when they do, it's never what you want to hear. He got his license at 17. Carol made a fuss about it. Took him out for ice cream, posted on Facebook, called her sisters. And me? I handed him the keys to the truck. The same truck Travis had abandoned in the backyard 5 years earlier. It was rusted out, full of rat droppings and spider webs when I first popped the hood. I spent 3 weekends cleaning it out, 6 months ordering parts, and a solid year making it safe enough to drive. I didn't tell Ethan what I was doing. I just left the keys on the table with a note. Runs better now. Be careful. He never thanked me. Just drove it like it had always been his, like it came from a tree out back that grew vehicles on branches. I told myself again, he's a teenager. Gratitude comes later. Keep laying bricks. That's all I did. Brick after brick. I paid for his sports fees, for his phone, his clothes, his summer trips. I handled every home repair myself because we couldn't afford contractors and I didn't want Carol stressing. I fixed everything except the silence in our house, which deepened with every year. By the time Ethan turned 20, I had spent over $50,000 on his needs. I never tracked it, not officially, but I remember the jobs. The months I picked up side gigs running wire in sweltering attics, crawling under trailers, working weekends while Carol and Ethan watched TV or went to visit her mother. And each time I'd come home, covered in dust and fiberglass, Carol would look up and say, "That you?" Like she hadn't noticed I was gone. I used to think it was worth it, that I was building a family, even if it didn't look like one. But the thing about building without blueprints, without being invited into the plan, is that sometimes what you're building isn't for you at all. I began to notice little things. Ethan stopped saying goodbye when he left the house. When he came back, he barely nodded. If I asked him how school was going, he'd say, "Fine," without lifting his eyes from his phone. At first, I chalked it up to age, then to stress, then to Carol whispering excuses like, "You know how boys are," or "He's just going through a phase." But deep down, I knew. I wasn't being ignored. I was being managed, tolerated, as if I were a helpful appliance, useful but invisible. His friends called me Sir, polite but distant. When they came over, I was the guy in the other room, the man behind the curtain, nothing more. One night, I sat down with Carol. I told her, "I don't think he sees me. Not really." She rubbed her temples, sighed. "Mike, he's never going to call you Dad. You knew that." "I'm not asking for that," I said. "I'm asking for respect. A little recognition. I've given up. You chose this." She snapped too quickly, then softened. "I'm just saying, he's had a hard time with Travis. Maybe you're expecting too much." I looked at her, long and hard, but she didn't meet my eyes. And right then, I realized something. It wasn't just Ethan who had drawn a line around me. Carol had too. Maybe she didn't mean to. Maybe it crept in over time. But I wasn't her partner. I was her solution. And you don't thank solutions. You use them until the problem goes away. I went to bed that night with a pit in my chest. Not anger. Not even sorrow. Just this slow, cold understanding that I had spent 7 years giving to a family that still didn't consider me one of their own. Still, I didn't leave. I kept working, kept fixing what broke, kept handing over money like it was love. Because I believed, right up until the moment I didn't, that what I was doing mattered. That someone someday would see it. And then came the barbecue. The day it all became clear. It happened in the backyard. That detail still sticks with me, like a nail in the tread of a tire. Not in private. Not quietly. It happened under the open sun, in the middle of a day meant for family. The grill was hot. The yard was full. Plates stacked high with chips and ribs. Neighbors and in-laws buzzing like flies over soda cans and folding chairs. That kind of day. I'd been up since 6 prepping. Cleaned the patio, set up tables, hosed down the cooler. Carol asked if I could put together one more extension cord so they could plug in the Bluetooth speaker. I ran wire from the garage to the far corner of the yard, while Ethan sat on the porch, scrolling on his phone, earbuds in, eyes empty. I remember asking him if he could help carry ice bags from the car. He didn't look up, just said, "Later." Later never came. By the time people arrived, I was already sweating through my shirt. Didn't matter. I stood at the grill with tongs in one hand and a beer in the other, playing the part. The man of the house. That's what I thought I was. Host. Provider. backbone. It was a role I'd settled into without applause. And maybe I didn't need applause, but I needed to believe it meant something. At first, the day passed like any other. Surface smiles. Small talk. The soundtrack of family pretending to be whole. Ethan floated between groups of cousins and neighbor kids, never once introducing me to anyone. They called me Sir out of habit, not familiarity. I was the guy making their burgers. That was all. Carol had a plastic cup of wine in her hand and was laughing louder than usual. She always did that when people were watching. I noticed the way she leaned into her sister when they talked, whispering, then glancing toward me. I told myself I was imagining it. Then the moment came. Someone, I don't remember who, made a joke about who was in charge of the house. Probably one of Carol's uncles. The kind of guy who only comes around for free food and stories he's already told twice. He said something like, "Well, Mike's got it easy, huh? Just the grill and the bills." And that's when Carol laughed and said it. Right in front of everyone. "He's not the one in charge here, relax." Just like that. Like I was some uptight guest getting above his station. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. That's what made it worse. It was casual. Dismissive. Like I was a joke everyone had already agreed upon behind closed doors. Ethan didn't even look up. He just shrugged, eyes still on his phone, and muttered, "Obviously." That one word. Obvious. As if it had always been understood. I stood there, tongs in hand, the grill smoking behind me. Something inside me shifted. So quietly I almost missed it. A weight dislodged. Not rage. Not pain. Just a quiet click. Like a lock turning in a door I didn't know I'd been standing behind all this time. I shut off the gas, set the tongs down, and walked inside. Nobody followed. Not right away. I heard the laughter falter. Conversations lose their rhythm. People murmuring, looking around, waiting for someone to fill the silence I left behind. But no one did, because no one knew what they'd broken. Inside, I washed my hands, took my beer, sat at the kitchen table and listened to the muffled confusion building in the yard. I didn't feel angry. I felt clean, like I just stepped out of something heavy. Carol came in 10 minutes later. Her eyebrows were raised, eyes wide with that rehearsed concern she used when other people were watching. "What's going on?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked. "You said I'm not in charge," I replied. She blinked. "It was a joke, Mike." I nodded. "I know." And Ethan agreed. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Because silence is a choice, too. I stood up, walked past her. She didn't follow. That night, the party died out early. The food went cold. People left with confused looks and half-empty plates. Ethan disappeared into his room. Carol cleaned up like nothing happened. But something had. Something permanent. I didn't yell. I didn't write a note. I didn't pack a bag. That would have given them a scene to explain. I did what they always claimed I was: not in charge. Not important. Not essential. And I acted accordingly. The next morning, I woke up at 5, same as always. But instead of heading to work, I sat at the dining table with my laptop, canceled the shared subscriptions, cut off the fuel card tied to Ethan's truck, called the bank and removed myself from the co-signed account that paid for his tuition and living expenses, froze the emergency card Carol used for groceries when she forgot her wallet. Quiet, surgical, clean. Then I opened the hall closet and began packing my tools. Not because I was leaving, because they weren't mine anymore. Over the next week, I stopped doing the things they never saw as work. I stopped fixing the kitchen sink that had been leaking for 3 months. Stopped mowing the lawn. Stopped driving Ethan to campus when his car wouldn't start. When the thermostat died, I left it. When the bills arrived, I placed them on the counter in a neat stack, unpaid. Nobody noticed at first. Ethan still muttered thanks when I tossed him the keys out of habit. Carol still asked what I wanted for dinner, though she never cooked what I said. The machine kept running, but it was running on borrowed time. 3 days in, Ethan asked if I'd filled the truck. I told him no. "Gas station's down the road," I said. Your dad ever show you how to fill up? He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then he scoffed and walked off. On the fourth day, Carol asked why Netflix wasn't working. I shrugged. No idea. By the sixth day, Ethan's truck was sitting idle in the driveway. He missed class. Then too. Carol texted me from work, asking if I could help him out. I didn't respond. That night, she asked again over dinner. I kept chewing. Didn't lift my eyes from my plate. She finally snapped. Are you really going to punish a kid because you're feeling hurt? I set my fork down, looked her in the eyes. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not fixing what doesn't belong to me. You're part of this family. No, I said, voice flat. I was part of the help. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. And maybe I had, in a way she couldn't see. Because when someone finally echoes the truth you've been hiding behind, it burns. Ethan came to me 2 days later, knocked on the door of my office, didn't apologize, just stood there, arms crossed, and said, "Can you help me with the truck?" I turned in my chair. What's wrong with it? Won't start. What do you want me to do? He shifted. Fix it? I don't know. You always fix it. I stood up, walked to the window. The truck was slanted, tires low, oil leaking again from the seal I warned him about months ago. Ask your dad, I said. He stared. Are you serious? I don't fix things for strangers. That was the moment it started to crack. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just left, quiet, confused, like the ground had shifted and he didn't know how to stand on it anymore. The house got quieter after that. Carol avoided me. Ethan slammed fewer doors. I think they were waiting for me to snap, waiting for me to make it easy by being cruel. But I didn't. I just stopped doing the things that made their lives easier. Because they were never mine to begin with. They were rentals. Borrowed burdens I was expected to carry for free. I wasn't angry. I was done. They didn't notice right away. That's the cruelest thing about stepping back. You learn just how invisible you always were. I thought the silence would be deafening. That when I stopped fixing, stopped funding, stopped carrying, someone would come running. But the house kept humming for a little while, like a dying engine still running on leftover fumes. The first signs came slow. The grass got long. The trash bin stayed full. Ethan's laundry piled up in the corner of the hallway like it was waiting for a ghost to collect it. The fridge started looking more like a storage unit than a kitchen appliance. Just mismatched containers of half-eaten leftovers and condiments nobody used. Carol began asking questions. Did you pay the water? Nope. What about the gas bill? I haven't touched it. She blinked at me, confused maybe, or pretending to be. Her tone stayed calm, measured, like she was navigating a stranger's house. We're past due on 2 cards, she said. You didn't do the transfer? No. Why? Because you said I wasn't in charge. I watched her lips part, words caught in her throat. She wanted to correct me, but we both knew the truth. That sentence at the barbecue hadn't just been a joke. It had been a declaration. One she thought wouldn't cost her anything. But now the ledger was open and the debt was real. Ethan was next. He came down the stairs 3 days after the power bill was returned unpaid. His hair was wet, half-showered, probably cold. His face was flushed, annoyed. Wi-Fi's down, he said. Probably. Aren't you gonna call someone? No. A beat passed. I didn't look up from my coffee. He stood there, shifting his weight like a kid caught in a waiting room without his phone. So what now? He asked. I sipped my coffee. Now you figure it out. The panic didn't come all at once. Crept in sideways. The realization that life costs something. That comfort isn't automatic. That the lights don't just stay on because you wish them to. It began with the small things. Hot water that ran cold. A canceled Netflix account. A missed Uber payment when his card got declined. Then it got heavier. A week after the utilities started slipping, Ethan's university account froze. He didn't say anything to me, not directly, but I saw the email open on the family computer when I passed the living room. Outstanding balance. Late fees. A warning about withdrawal of services if payment wasn't received within 5 business days. Carol cornered me the same night. You need to fix this, she said, voice tight. No, I don't. Mike, it's tuition. You've always covered it. I nodded. Until I wasn't family anymore. She looked at me like I was speaking a different language. He's your stepson. No, he's Travis's son. Remember? Her hands clenched at her sides. You're punishing him. No, I said quietly. I'm letting him live in the world he built. Carol didn't answer. She just stood there, frozen, as if someone had hit the pause button. I waited for the next words. Some justification, some desperate spin, but they never came. Eventually, she walked away, her footsteps soft on the tile, like guilt trying not to wake the house. The next morning, Ethan knocked on my door. First time in weeks. His voice was tight, rehearsed. I need help. With, he hesitated. They're threatening to lock my student portal. That's between you and your father. He stared at me. You mean Travis? I nodded. He's not gonna pay. You know that. I do. His voice cracked. So what? What am I supposed to do? I looked him in the eye. That's not my question to answer anymore. He stood there stunned. Not because he didn't understand, but because, for the first time, he realized I meant it. The safety net was gone. The invisible support beams had collapsed. The man who once paid silently was now silent in a different way. He tried one more time. I thought you were better than that. I leaned back in my chair, calm. I was, for a long time. He didn't respond, just turned and walked out. I heard him slam his door upstairs, the final punctuation mark of a boy who'd never learned that consequences don't care about your feelings. The fallout came in waves. Week 2. The truck broke down again. Ethan tried to get it to start for 2 hours. Popped the hood, Googled solutions, called a friend. Nothing worked. He ended up Ubering to campus using Carol's phone. Week 3. The school finally locked him out. I overheard the call. Him pleading, voice cracking, trying to explain that his stepdad usually pays. That sentence twisted something in my chest. Stepdad. Not Mike. Not the man he'd reduced to a stranger. Now I was a lifeline again, but only because the rope was fraying. Carol pleaded that night. He's just a kid. He's 20. He made a mistake. No, I said. He told the truth. I just finally believed him. She sat at the table across from me, hands trembling. You can't just cut him off. He needs help. So did I said. For 7 years. I needed a word, a nod, a sign that I mattered in this house. I never got one. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know it hurt you that much. I didn't either, until I stopped. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of anger, but to make the lines visible. Physical. Obvious. By week 4, the balance of power was shattered. Ethan tried to call Travis. I knew because I heard the conversations through the wall, short, tense, awkward, always ending with, okay. Yeah. No, I get it. Followed by silence. Sometimes he threw things. Once I heard him cry, and still I didn't intervene. One night, he came downstairs, face drawn tight, eyes rimmed red. I need to talk. I gestured to the chair. Saturday, I messed up, he said. No theatrics. Just a whisper. I waited. I didn't mean what I said. At the barbecue. You did, I said. You just didn't think it would cost you anything. Silence. I didn't know you'd take it that hard. I leaned in. You didn't think I'd take it at all. That's the problem. He nodded, slowly. I waited. There was no apology. Just regret. Not the same thing. Finally, he asked, can you help me this once? Just this semester. I'll figure it out after. I looked him dead in the eye. What would you have done if I wasn't here? He didn't answer. I nodded. That's what you'll do now. He stood, quiet, walked away. I heard him cry again that night. And still, I didn't go to him. Because sometimes the only way a boy becomes a man is when the crutches are taken away. Carol stopped speaking to me for a while. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe to punish me. I didn't chase her. I didn't ask for her validation anymore. In the absence of obligation, I found clarity. Every time I made dinner and ate alone, I tasted freedom. Every time I paid my bills but not theirs, I felt a boundary hold. Every time Ethan walked past me with shoulders slumped, I reminded myself, you chose this, not me. The house ran colder, quieter, but it didn't fall apart. Not right away. That came later, when the tuition finally came due, and no one else was there to cover it. The first real silence didn't come from me. Came from Ethan. Not the usual silence, the kind he wore like armor, passive and adolescent. This was different. He stopped asking, stopped knocking, stopped trying to hide the unraveling. There were no more slammed doors, no more sideways glances. He moved through the house like a ghost who knew the living could see right through him. It was the tuition. The bill finally came due, final in every sense of the word. The university withdrew him. No notice, just a sterile email with phrases like failure to remit and administrative hold. The kind of cold bureaucracy that doesn't care who loved you or who didn't. The kind that makes consequences real. He got the news on a Monday. I know because I found the letter in the mailbox before he did. Thick envelope. University seal. I set it on the kitchen table and didn't say a word. An hour later, he found it. I heard the tear of paper, the stillness after. No shouting. Just a chair sliding across tile, followed by slow footsteps retreating down the hall. He didn't come out for dinner. Carol did, but she didn't touch her plate. Just sat there, watching me like she was waiting for a verdict. You're really not going to help? She finally asked. I kept my fork moving. No. Even now? With everything falling apart? Especially now. She looked at me like I was made of stone. Like the man who had once paid for her son's braces, her vacations. Her second chance at stability had been replaced by something hollow. You're punishing him, she said again, quieter this time. I didn't look up. No, I'm holding him accountable. And me? She asked. Are you holding me accountable too? I paused. The question lingered, thick and electric. Yes. Her lip trembled, just once. Then she stood, plate untouched, and left me in the silence I'd chosen months ago. The next day, Ethan came to me one last time. No pretense, no attitude, just quiet footsteps and a folded piece of paper in his hand. A printed list of local jobs, warehouse openings, night shift delivery, fast food. He didn't say what he needed. He didn't beg. He placed the paper on my desk and said, "Can you help me get to the interviews?" It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. I nodded, and that was the start of something different. I didn't pay. I didn't rescue. I didn't sit him down and deliver a fatherly speech about responsibility. I just drove, quietly, consistently, let him feel the weight of things without removing it. Let him stumble, sweat, fail. The first few weeks were hard. He botched his first 2 interviews, showed up late to one, misspoke at another, got ghosted by a third. Each time he came home, his silence thickened. Not out of defiance, but disappointment in himself. But he kept going. He finally landed something 2 months in, a late shift job restocking at a warehouse near the freeway. $10 an hour, 12 with overtime. Not enough to rebuild the future he thought he was owed, but enough to start scraping the edges of independence. Carol didn't celebrate. She just nodded and made dinner. It was the first time we'd sat at the same table since the fallout. But the air between us wasn't warm. It was surgical, precise, the kind of silence where words are too dangerous to trust. That night, she asked if we could talk. I followed her to the porch. "He's trying," she said. "You see that, right?" "I see it." "He's learning." "Yes." A long pause. Then, carefully, "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I looked at the sky. The stars were soft, unfocused, the kind of night that used to feel peaceful. "I don't need to forgive him," I said. "I just need him to understand I'm not free." She flinched like I'd hit her. "What about us?" she asked. I turned to her. "There is no us." Tears welled in her eyes. But she didn't argue. She didn't collapse into apology. She just nodded, like someone reading the final line of a story they knew would end this way. Because here's the truth. I could have forgiven Ethan. Maybe I already had, in small ways. A ride here, a nod there. But Carol? She was the adult. She was the one who stood beside me and let her son define my worth. Her silence that day at the barbecue wasn't passive. It was a verdict. She'd watched me carry him for years and let him spit on my hands when I finally set him down. And that's the part no one talks about. The betrayal doesn't always come with screaming. Sometimes it comes with a laugh, a joke, a shrug, and silence. Carol moved out 3 weeks later. Said she was giving me space. I didn't ask where she was going. She left with a suitcase and half her pride. Ethan stayed behind, not because he wanted to, but because he had nowhere else to go. He didn't ask to stay. I didn't ask him to leave. We just existed in the same space, day by day, slowly untangling the knots neither of us knew we'd tied. He kept working. I kept letting him. I didn't offer advice, didn't give him lectures. But I noticed when he started waking up without an alarm. When he started bringing home groceries without being asked. When he started saying, thanks, in a way that didn't sound like a chore. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. One night, he knocked on my door again. This time just to talk. Did you ever hate me? He asked. I thought about lying. No, I said. But I resented you. For a long time. He nodded. I don't blame you. I know. Silence. Then he said, you didn't deserve how I treated you. That was the closest he ever came to an apology. And strangely, it was enough. I didn't embrace him. Didn't offer a tearful reunion. I just nodded and said, good night, Ethan. He said, good night, Mike. And that was the moment I understood. We'd never be father and son. But we could be two men in the same house, earning respect one quiet day at a time. I set boundaries. I never paid for him again. Never co-signed. Never stepped in where I wasn't asked. If he needed something, he worked for it. And if he failed, he faced it alone. Because I wasn't building a boy anymore. I was standing beside the rubble of a man who'd never been taught how to hold his own weight. Carol never came back. She texted a few times. Wanted to talk. I ignored the messages. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. The truth is, I didn't walk out on the family. I became exactly what they told me I was. And when I did, when I stopped carrying them, they collapsed under the weight they'd always expected me to bear. That's the part people don't understand. Sometimes the best way to show someone what you meant is to disappear. To let them feel the hole you used to fill. Not out of cruelty. Not out of revenge. But out of necessity. Because love without respect is just servitude. And I had served long enough. So now I ask you, the silent witnesses, the ones who read and wonder, was I wrong? Was it cruelty to finally let go of people who only held on to me when it was convenient? Was I supposed to keep paying for a life that never included me? Or was this the only way left to be seen? Would you have endured it? Would you have stayed? Or would you have done what I did? Looked at the house you built with your own hands, and finally walked away from the people who never called it yours? Tell me, what would you have done?